Okay, to place the markers, I'm going to use the standard brush. I'm going to use the drag dot stroke, and I'm going to use alpha 14. Make sure polypainting is on. Make sure your color is set to black. Make sure Z-add is off. And let's just start with our first position, the glabella. Make sure that's the forwardmost point, so it looks pretty close. Get the transition from the glabella to the nasal bone and the tip of the nose. Okay, the highest or the forwardmost point of the superciliary arch. It's pretty close. Frontal process, zygomatic, canine fossa, underneath the nose, right there at the teeth. Mid-zygomatic, and right there where the zygomatic bone gives way to the skull, the brain bowl there. Let's come up, frontal eminence, halfway for the eye. Okay, just eyeball it, don't sweat it, don't let it get stuck, or don't let yourself get stuck in anything. Okay, let's come into the jaw. Coronoid process, maybe lower my draw size. Angle. Mid-molar 2. Forgot that on the cranial portion. Okay, get the area below the teeth at the lip-chin fold, mentalis, and then as it progresses downwards. Okay, you got to be careful of some things. You want to be careful you don't get the underlying or surfaces that are wrapping around. It just really messes up mesh extraction. So I'm going to make sure that all of that, it's not any of the underlining portion. Okay. You could get things like the overhang, but it's kind of unessential because it's quite thin there. So we can leave that one alone. Some markers get the corner of the eye here. But this is going to give us enough to triangulate our data and start to get a scientific approach to it all. I did forget one. Go back up to the cranium and right the forwardmost point of the forehead. Yes. Again, as I mentioned, that can change. If you were in with the clay brush, you could say add a forehead where a portion of it was even more forward, but you can see that's not necessarily the direction we're going. Okay, and also I want to reiterate, the skull is not the best indicator of gender, but there are certain consistent truths to it. Foreheads tend to be more forward. The glabella here tends to be much less distinct. I have it fairly distinct. Fairly distinct. But this would be kind of the difference between, say, Hilary Swank and Julia Roberts. There's going to be a little bit more brow on Hilary Swank. Okay. Angle of the jaw tends to be less pronounced in a female. Tends to be a little bit more round. On a male, that can get, the attachment there can get quite huge. And then on females, the cheeks tend to be wider, rounder. Everything tends to be rounder. So we're going to just soften it slightly, but I'm not going to get too caught up in anything because, as I've said many times now, the key is going to be when we put the face on and then we start to say, oh, didn't realize dude looked like a lady. And go from there. So there's our markers. Now the next step is that we come down to masking. And we say mask by intensity. You can then come to mesh extraction, set your thickness, and press extract. Okay, check them. Not quite that thick. They're a little bit on the small side. Let's put that up a little bit. Yeah, they could get larger. So we're going to delete these. And I'm going to set that to 0.2. Extract. Okay, that's large enough for me to cause some problems later. And then let's do the same thing with the jaw. You have to make sure that you press masking, mask by intensity. Then you come in and set the thickness and extract. Done. We've got some problems here with the teeth portion, but otherwise everything looks like it's in pretty good shape. So now we want to come in and set the measurements. Let's just merge these guys down. All right, and let's do a little bit of cleanup. Be best if you go to polygroups and you set auto group on. That way we can isolate each individual piece. Okay, so those were problem areas. And looks like they're the only ones. So now all you've got to do is go to geometry and you can just say delete hidden. Pretty straightforward. Turn solo mode off. And let's start with the brow. And we've already determined that we're going to set this, or that it's already set to millimeters actually. So let's see if we can set these guys right now. I'm just going to drag this out while they're invisible. Looks quite thick, doesn't it? Looks like there's a lot of skin thickness there, and that is actually something that's going to be popping through your mind quite frequently. But like I said, the upper portion is largely 5 millimeters on average. We could set this to 4, and I would feel more comfortable as well. Control click. Okay, and you can see that one of the better solutions I've got here is I'm just masking out the side, drawing out my action line, and then using the move to just move it along there. Okay. There's our markers along the forehead getting started. So I'm just going to keep working and adjusting them all. What we're going to do in terms of size is get all of the upper ones set at around 5. That includes the zygomatic, the frontal process here. It does include the zygomatic, but in the lower portion, we're going to start switching that to 10. So everywhere around, we're just going to keep it at 10. And then we'll come back when these are all repositioned or resized.